I'm Tony and welcome to another Board Game Revolution preview. Today we'll be looking at Cryptic Explorers, a 2 to 4 player asymmetrical sci-fi horror game published by Tempest Tome Games. Through the use of a newfound gateway, humans are now able to enter the realms of death. Dubbed Cryptonauts, they scour these places in search of the knowledge of death. But there are dark guardians to these realms. The goddesses of death seek to deny the Cryptonauts their prize and will stop at nothing in order to protect their secrets. One player takes control of one of 3 goddesses of death. Each goddess has its own skills, card deck, and monsters. The other players will equally divvy up 6 of the available 32 Cryptonauts. Each is unique, and building a well-rounded team is important. They then agree on one of the 4 realms of death. Each realm has its own map, rules, and objectives that need to be completed. Cryptonauts can be split between 2 starting locations on a map, while the goddess doesn't actually appear on the map, but instead summons minions to deal with the invaders. The goal of the Cryptonauts is to explore the map and collect 3 Knowledge of Death cards before transporting out of the realm. There's a few different ways to collect the Knowledge of Death cards. One way is to collect artifacts, and the other is to complete one of the realm's objectives. Realm objectives can be anything from looting 5 sarcophagi placed around the map and making sacrifices to the eternal fire, to returning bones to their resting place. Once 3 Knowledge of Death cards have been obtained, the Cryptonauts must teleport themselves to safety to win the game. To stop this, the Goddess of Death must use her skills and minions to kill the Cryptonauts before they can gain the Knowledge of Death cards and escape. During the round, each Cryptonaut gets to perform 2 actions. These actions can be things such as moving, attacking, looting, and using character-unique abilities. As Cryptonauts move around the map, they can collect artifacts and souls. Collecting an artifact will grant them a new skill or gear, as well as a Knowledge of Death card. Souls are used to power up your Cryptonaut or for use of special powers. Each Cryptonaut has a sheet which lists their abilities. Any ability with this symbol is available from the start of the game. If the ability has an empty flame next to it, you can use a soul collected to activate that skill. Finally, if there are teeth depicted within the flame, that means you must sacrifice a soul every time you want to use that ability. Combat is dice-based, so players will need to be in range and perform an aim or cast check depending on if they're attacking with a weapon or spell. To do this, a player must roll at or below the aim or cast number. When Cryptonauts die, they drop all of their artifacts, souls, and Knowledge of Death cards. These can then be picked up by other Cryptonauts and continue the fight. Once they have a Knowledge of Death card, Cryptonauts can teleport out of the realm into safety if there are at least one other Cryptonaut. If they do this, however, they are removed from the game and the remaining Cryptonauts must try to finish the mission without them. Once all Cryptonauts have finished their turn, it's time for the goddess to go. But she operates a little differently than the rest of the Cryptonauts. She has a deck of cards that she pulls from each turn, and each goddess has a limit to the cards that they can have in their hand. These cards have 2 different options on them. One is an action you can use once before discarding. The other grants an ongoing effect called a mastery. These have wide ranges of uses and can really help give you an edge. You aren't just limited to cards though. You can summon monsters to hunt down and kill the Cryptonauts. Similar to the Cryptonauts, each monster has unique stats, skills, and can perform 2 actions per round. In order to do any of these things though, the goddess must use her power. Each turn the goddess gains more power tokens, and can even discard cards from her hand in order to gain more. It's often a tough choice. Do you use your power at the end of each turn, or do you stockpile it for a while and unleash a massive attack against the Cryptonauts later? Well, let's jump into the middle of a round and see what a turn may look like. The Cryptonauts will go first. To start, the infantry Cryptonaut will use her 2 turns to move and then loot a sarcophagus. Because she did this, she must then flip over a trap card. For this trap, she must pass a stamina check or lose 2 health. She must roll at or below her current stamina, which is 5. And she is successful, so no damage is done. The android will move closer to her team and use 1 action to prepare herself. This allows her to take an action during the goddess's turn if an enemy moves within range. Magus has an active ability called the Ether stat. With this, he can ignore pits and walls. So with his 2 moves, he walks over and collects an artifact. He then gains an artifact gear and a Knowledge of Death card. Now it's the goddess's turn. She draws 2 cards into her hand and gains 1 power at the start of her turn as indicated on her goddess sheet. Then she gains 1 extra power for each of the 2 monoliths she's activated. She then decides to discard 1 card from her hand to gain 1 last power. She uses 3 of her power to activate another monolith. Then she pays 1 power to play 1 of her cards and give herself a new mastery. This one allows her to ignore normal summoning rules to spawn monsters adjacent to pits, and then spends her last power to spawn a Crypthound next to Magus. She then moves a Crypthound already on the board toward the android. Since the android is prepared, she stops the monster when it comes into range and attacks it. She rolls her attack die and is successful, which causes 2 damage. Since the Crypthound has a health of 4, it's still alive. It finishes its first move and uses its second to attack. The goddess rolls her attack die and is also successful, causing 1 damage to the android. If the goddess had any more power available, she could have used the Crypthound's ability to spawn another Crypthound next to the victim. Then it would be the Cryptonaut's next turn, and so on until the Cryptonauts are killed or escape with 3 Knowledge of Death cards. Cryptic Explorers is not necessarily a light game, both in terms of mechanics and in literal weight, but in this case it also means that it's pretty substantial. With 3 goddesses, 4 game boards, 10 monster types, and 32 Cryptonauts, there's a lot of variety packed into the box. The gameplay has a heavy focus on strategy no matter which side of the conflict you're on, and you'll need to think a few moves ahead of your opponent if you want to come out on top. Through the use of the artwork and narrative text sprinkled throughout the rulebook and game cards, the team at Tempest Tome Games seem to have crafted a unique and rich world to explore. Cryptic Explorers will draw in players who enjoy asymmetrical dungeon crawlers and are looking for a game heavy on strategy with a distinctive sci-fi horror theme. The game mats and bone dice featured in this preview will also be available as add-ons during the Kickstarter campaign when it goes live on August 20th. I'm Tony, and thanks for being part of the board game revolution. We'll see you in our next video preview.